Afternoon, everybody. I'm taking the place of Ben Jennings, who was going to do this talk, but he's not here, so I'm doing it. So I've been working in rainforest regeneration for 30 years or so, and I run Five Wheel Rainforest Nursery, as you probably know. And so people come to the nursery every day with their story, and I usually ask the same questions to everybody every time, whether they own a house block in Suffolk Park or whether they own 100 acres at the back of Main Arm or up at Terania Creek or Kyogle or wherever. And the two important things you need to know ideally to assess for your species selection is site characteristics and then the qualities and characteristics of all the rainforest plants. So there's about 400 or 500 of them, and maybe 200 rainforest associate plants, eucalypts and wattles and things like that. So to know, all the characteristics of all those plants is, a lifetime of work. But you can obviously learn the most basic and easy ones. But the site characteristics are more easy to understand. So first question is, where do you live? So we want to find out straight away what the soil is, what the rock was, whether it's basalt and then it develops into red soil or it develops into black soil, whether you live on the clay soils of mostly Byron Shire, whether you live up in the rhyolite, up in the hills, whether you live down on the sandstone around the Channon or different parts of the area where you get a bit of sandstone, which gives you a much sandier, poorer soil. So soil obviously is critical. So the first question is, where do you live? What sort of soil have you got? And that soil is obviously from the rock. Then the next question is the geography. So do you live on a floodplain? Do you live up on a ridge? Is it going to be windy? Is it going to be dry? Is it going to be south-facing, north-facing? Is it highly sun exposed? Do you have a bit of existing vegetation you're planting around? So all those really important critical things determine your site, determine your species selection. And if you live in a frosty area, then your choices of rainforest trees, and if it's a very frosty area like Lower Bangalow or Lower Corndale, then your species choice can be like 3 species. If you live of rainforest trees. If you live in Alstonville, up on the plateau where it rains, you get spring rains from the storms, you get warm climate from the ocean, you get beautiful 100-metre deep red soil. It's the bee's knees of rainforest sites. You can plant 400 species. And often the sites are, degraded. They've been cleared for 100 years, so the soil's, not as good as it was. But with the right sort of planting technique and the right sort of stock, you can still plant up to 300 species in the middle of the paddock. So the first thing I'd like to do is just go through a little bit of site characteristics and then go through some of the ways to help you guys learn about the trees and how to select for your site, and then hopefully we'll have time for a few questions. So I've mentioned a few things. The most other things that we didn't mention was obviously rainfall is important. How much, if you live in Kyogle, or even if you live in Nimbin, there's a different rainfall to Gooningary, where it seems to be the highest rainfall. Ballina has a very high rainfall. Bangalow and up to Springvale Hill has a much higher rainfall than Lismore. So it's critical to the... Oh, thanks. My mouth's so dry. I've been talking all day. Sorry? Especially about rainfall. Yeah, we could do with some rain. So... And obviously your species selection depends on the seasonality of rainfall. So this time of year, in spring, traditionally it's a dry period of time. So if you're going to plant now and you can't water, then your species selection has to reflect that. You can help by having water crystals. You can plant bigger plants. You can plant on a better site, a moister site. but your species selection may change because it's a dry. If you're planting in the wet season, in March, April, May, your species selection might broaden out because there's more chance of rain. So you've got your site characteristics, north facing, ridge lines, whether it's on the coast obviously is critical, but the most important things are flood and frost, and it's one of the first questions they ask, is it frosty? And if you've got frost, then you often have to plant like a cover crop. So you mightn't be able to say this site has frost, but it was a highly diverse rainforest like down in Bouillon, where you get 300-400 species of trees and shrubs and ground covers and vines, maybe 400, 500. You can't just plant those trees in the paddock next door because of the frost. Eventually, you will get a rainforest, but you need something that's going to protect those trees from frost, and those are frost-hardy trees. So there's only a few that you can count on to go to like -5, and you get to -5 in Bouillon, and that's the silky oak. Silky oak is a fabulous tree. It can handle wet, and it can handle dry, and it can handle frost. So we use silky oak a lot. And the other magnificent tree, which has the other magnificent tree, but has one problem. This is Duboisia, or corkwood. It grows fast, is a fabulous pioneer. It fruits early, birds love it. Problem is, and it can handle any frost. The problem is, it doesn't like wet feet, so you can't plant it low, where most frosty sites are. So that's a problem. Water gum, Tristaniopsis lorina, which I thought I brought, is a Tristaniopsis, so it's related to brush box and swamp box, and it's been around for a long time. So it's developed frost hardiness, and that's the other species. So you've got silky oak, Duboisia, water gum, Tristaniopsis, and Acacia melanoxylon, which is our rainforest acacia. They're the 4 species you can plant if you've got a really super frosty site. And then from there it goes up to another layer of maybe 10, maybe 15 species, and up higher until you get no frost, and you got a whole suite of 200 or 300 species. So we're talking mainly about the site's limitations. If you've got site limitations, it limits your species, so you've got to have less and less and less. So in order to learn what those species are that suits your site, we group trees into groups that all have the same characteristics. So it makes it easier for us to then understand what we can plant. So there's pioneers, there's secondaries, and there's mature phase trees. The pioneers have similar characteristics: grow fast, fruit early, die young, often have thin leaves, so a lot of light can get through them. And here's the water gum. Thought I had it there. That's Tristaniopsis there. So the pioneers, you probably, if you want to not learn anything, any rainforest trees of the 400, learn the pioneers, because they're the ones that you use probably the most. So brown currajong, Commersonia bartramia, fast growing, fabulous tree, has lovely flowers, nice horizontal branches for birds to perch on, lovely architecture for all the little birds to come and drop the seeds you want in your site. Duboisia I talked about is another pioneer. The red ash is another fast-growing pioneer, and bleeding heart. And bleeding heart is probably the ultimate pioneer. It lives the shortest. Well, maybe Trema does, but this is much more ubiquitous across the whole of the big scrub. Very fast-growing, fruits early, birds love it, lives for like 5-7 years and just dies. So it's done its job. And its job is not just to sort of change the microclimate of the site and give you a little bit of shade for the other trees. It's also to change the soil. So there's a lot going on as above as below. So there's a lot of soil chemistry that's being changed, a lot of organic matter that's being formed by the dropping of the leaves, because pioneers turn their leaves over every year at least. So you're getting a conditioning of the soil and a conditioning of the microclimate. So if you can learn these pioneers, then you're sort of halfway there, really. There are a few more, but we'll just stick with a few of the obvious ones. And then you get secondaries. Secondaries are still fast growing, but not as fast. They live for a bit longer, maybe 20, maybe 30 years, 10, 30, 20, 30 years, up to 40. And they still fruit relatively early, but they're a little bit slower. And so the theory is that the pioneers do their thing, the secondaries then come through and do their thing. Often it doesn't work like a textbook. The secondaries will come through, and forget about the pioneers. It'll do all sorts of weird things, but if you just get that sort of concept of the pioneers doing their thing and then the secondaries coming up and living longer, and this is a cheese tree, that's a classic sort of pioneer, lives for, 20, 30 years, and then you get longer-lived pioneers, so secondaries. So secondaries, another characteristic I forgot to mention of pioneers is that they won't germinate in the shade. So if you've already got a rainforest and bleeding heart seed falls, it won't germinate. It's too shady. So a secondary, if there's enough light, a secondary will germinate. And if it's too shady, then only mature phase or slow growing things like rosewoods and black beans and bouillons and stuff, they're the only ones who germinate. So secondaries, they need a fair bit of light to germinate, they need a fair bit of light to grow, and they take up that space in between pioneers and secondaries. And this is a great secondary. This is Bennett's ash, Flinders bennettiana. There's a few Flinders, I'm sure you know, Cudgery, teak, yellowwood, and so they're a great secondary. They live for quite a long time, have lovely timber, and they take up that space. But once that canopy is dense enough, these won't be able to germinate again, unless there's a gap or some disturbance in the rainforest that lets the light in. So secondaries, and then you get the mature phase things, which are very slow growing, often, and live forever. And so I've got a representing the laurel family is hairy walnut. Doesn't really like sun, doesn't really like to be planted in the middle of a paddock, even this big, but it will survive, a bit sunburnt, and it'll grow, form a medium-sized tree, stay under the canopy, drop very large fruit, and it'll live sort of forever. There's an understory species like this lovely glossy laurel, which will only grow to 2 or 3 metres and needs the understory, and it's a mature phase. Black bouillon there, black apple there, very slow growing, takes forever. You plant all black bouillons in the paddock, and all your mature phase trees like black apple, red bean, red beans are sort of secondary, rosewood, black bean, then it'll be a disaster of a rainforest planting. You need to have the pioneers to get it up, you need some secondaries to get it going, and you need those mature phase to follow through at the end. If you've got a really harsh site, frost, flood, north facing, shit soil, rocky, rubbish, drop out the mature phase, more pioneers, more secondaries, just to get it going. There's no point saying, this place used to grow bouillon and most luxuriant rainforest. It's been cleared for 100 years. It's not going to happen. You need to get those pioneers happening. You need to get 5 minutes to go, and you need to get that growth happening to try and condition the soil. And we've had too many failures, and we've learnt too much for all you guys to go out there and make more mistakes. We've done it 1,000 times now, and now we know we can go, you need 20% pioneers, you need 30, you need 40% pioneers, otherwise it's not going to happen. There are some species that don't fit in the box, and the blue quandong is a classic. It's classified as a late secondary. it's sort of as fast as a pioneer. It grows as fast as any of those pioneers in a reasonable site. So it fits that bill as fast growing. It lives almost forever, and it doesn't sort of germinate in really dense shade, but almost. And it's the ultimate rainforest tree in your planting. It'll take off, look awesome, buttress early, fruit, and you think, you know, you've really achieved the ultimate goal of rainforest succession in this tree. The only problem is it hates frost, really hates frost. So if you haven't got any frost, or if you can put up some sort of structure, like tree structure that you can get blue quandings in, they're awesome. They've come down from Asia not that long ago, so they need another million years before they adapt their frost tolerance, but they're a fabulous tree. Red cedar is another one that doesn't really fit the bill. It's also super fast. If it didn't get hit by tip moth, it would be even faster than a blue quandong. And it's deciduous, which is sort of weird. So light things can grow under it. It lives forever, and it is sort of classified as a bit of a late secondary, so it doesn't germinate in really dark shade, but it is a fabulous tree. It's just the tip moth. So you can't even put too many in your planting. And lily pillies I haven't mentioned, and lots of other hoop vines and things that all have different structures and all have different architectures that all help. So the more diversity you can get in, the more structure you get in, but just keeping in your mind that concept of the characteristics of the site determine your seed selection. It's not like, I love blue quandong, so I'm going to put them in. It's like, what's my site telling me? What are the trees over there telling me? What's the grass telling me? What's the water telling me? So then I can design a planting that suits my site. And if you particularly love blue quandongs or something, then you can try and create a habitat for blue quandongs. But you try and think in that concept of the site tells you what to plant, and then the pioneer, the secondary, and the mature with these weird ones that don't quite fit in the box, and you make a matrix out of those. So I've got 1 minute for one question. Sorry, I went too long. Anybody, any questions? I can talk to you over here if you've got any, specific weird sites you want to talk about, but otherwise come to the nursery.
Thank you very much, Mark.